So as my dad mentioned, I am one of the teachers here at Sunbeam Preschool, and one of my favorite things about teaching at Sunbeam here is the fact that I get to share about God with my students each day and let them know how much they are loved. Seeing their joy and excitement when learning about Jesus is always the highlight of my day. So I figured what better way to start off my sermon today than by sharing with you a glimpse into what I get to do each day here at Sunbeam. Now, what I did not get to capture on camera were the conversations we had during Jesus' time when I talked about this to the students about what a disciple is and how they can all be disciples. After explaining to them that the disciples were Jesus' best friends that helped share the good news about God's love, and that some even helped to write the Bible, there were hands up ready to tell me about what they had learned that day. One of my favorite things I heard was when one student called another student her disciple, since they are best friends. And I reminded them that they can be each other's disciple as they remind each other all about God's love. With another group I had students who wanted to tell me what they wanted to be when they grew up. And I asked if they could still be a disciple even in their future careers. I had a future police officer who would share about God with fellow cops, and I had a vet who would tell all her patients about Jesus. Every student raised their hand when I asked what they wanted to be and how they could be a disciple and talk about how they would share. I asked how they would be a disciple, and they talked about how they would share all about God and the Bible with all the people they met. So in case you haven't figured it out by now, today's sermon will be focused on disciples and will be the first of 4 sermons on discipleship. If you were here last week, our district superintendent, Gina, introduced this topic perfectly in her sermon as she talked about the importance of going out and making disciples as followers of Christ. But I want to dive deeper into this and explore exactly what is a disciple and why should we care about being disciples. I went to the internet first to see what kind of definitions are out there for the word disciple. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a disciple is a personal follower of Jesus during his life, especially one of the 12 disciples. Another definition they gave was a follower or student of a teacher, leader, or philosopher. According to dictionary.com, a disciple is one of the 12 personal followers of Christ, one of the 70 followers sent forth by Christ, as it says in Luke chapter 10, verse 1, or any other professed follower of Christ in his lifetime. In the Cambridge Dictionary, a disciple is defined as a person who believes in the ideas of a leader, especially a religious or political one, and tries to live according to those ideas. If you look at each of these definitions, we can get a basic definition of a disciple, which is a follower or student of Christ. However, if we go back to our scripture from this morning, Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples. So in my opinion, a disciple goes beyond just following Christ and goes beyond just being a student. But by being a disciple, we are to not only be a student and follower learning about Christ and his teachings, but we are also to be a teacher as a disciple as we go out and share with others the good news of Christ. If we look to the Bible, we can find definitions about discipleship that help us to better understand what Jesus was saying when he told his disciples to go and make disciples. In Luke chapter 6, verse 40, it says, "A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher." Luke tells us that we will never be above Jesus, but by being disciples and sharing his word, we will be like Christ and live our lives like Christ. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 6, it says, "Let the one who is taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches." What I love about this verse is that it reminds me that we can all learn from one another. One of my favorite things about being a teacher is hearing things from a child's perspective, as it can cause me to think of something in a whole new way. Paul tells us in Galatians that as we learn from the word, we can also teach those who have taught us. As we learn more about Christ and as we immerse ourselves in the word, we can be in constant communication with those around us so that we can continue to share about Christ and grow as disciples. Paul also talks about himself as a disciple in Colossians chapter 1, verse 28 through 29, and says, "Christ is the one who we preach about. With all the wisdom we have, we warn and teach everyone. When we bring them to God, we want them to be like Christ. We want them to be grown up as people who belong to Christ. That's what I'm working for. I work hard with all the strength of Christ. His strength works powerfully in me." We looked at definitions from the internet that told us that a disciple is a student or follower of Christ. But when we look to the Bible to fully understand what Jesus meant when he told his disciples to go and make disciples, we can learn that it's so much more than being a student or a follower. It is living our lives as Christ lived his, while following in his ways and continuing to learn about him and grow in our faith. We then take what we know and share it with those around us and teach them about God and Christ so that they can be followers as well. Then, as they continue to learn and understand, they can go on and teach about Christ to those around them. Discipleship should be a never-ending cycle where we are continuing to learn about and teach others about Christ so that everyone can know about his promises and unending love. So if we know what a disciple is, and we're told as a church we should be disciples and go out and tell others about Jesus and invite them in, why is it important to you? Why do you care about discipleship? When I thought about this question and thought about why discipleship is important to me, I thought back on my life and people who served as disciples for me, helping me to learn more about Jesus and grow in my faith. Now, the obvious answer here would be my parents, as they raised me in a Christian home and brought me to church every Sunday. But I'm going to focus on others who made an impact on my life and how they served in my life as a disciple. Members of this church served as disciples for me growing up as I attended Sunday school, vacation Bible school, and made my confirmation. This church and its members helped create a foundation for my faith to grow on as I learned each week from many about the Bible and God's love for me. Through these experiences, I am now able to teach my preschool students and run VBS in camp to share about what I have learned with children so that they too can become disciples. I also think about my first summer at Mount Misery. Yes, my parents really did send me to a summer camp with that name. And I'll tell you, when I first got there, the name almost held true, as I found out I was the only girl my age attending that week. I was going to have to spend a week with a bunch of 10-year-old boys. Not exactly the most exciting thing to find out your first summer at a sleepaway camp. However, I did choose to stay and try it out, but about halfway through the week, I was missing home and I wanted to leave. One of the counselors that week at camp was named Stephanie. Stephanie and I became close quickly, and she became like a big sister to me. She would always sit with me during worship and at meals, and we would talk about our faith. She knew I was debating going home, and she wrote me this letter, which I have to share with you today. So this is from middle school, so I kept this letter in a safe box so that I could always go back to it. So this is what she wrote me that day. Meg, I hope you had fun today. I know you did. How could you not have fun at the beach? I hope you decide to stay the whole week. I know you miss your parents, and I know they miss you too. Camp wouldn't be the same if you left us. Family, a group experience of love and support, Marion Williamson. Camp is like a family, and without one of its members, it would fall apart. You're like a little sister to me. You're sweet and kind, and we would miss you way too much. I really hope you decide to stay. Love, Steph. P.S. We are all here for you. So this letter was a reminder that she was a mentor and she was there, someone who was there for me, and she gave me the courage to stay at camp. Stephanie continued to take me under her wing and help me grow in my faith that week, and I made it to the end of the week. If it was not for Stephanie and her discipleship, I wouldn't have gone to Mount Misery for another year. However, I ended up loving my experience, and the next year at camp was the year I gave my life to Christ and I asked him into my heart. Stephanie was there for that experience, and it was a life-changing moment for me as I truly dedicated my life to Christ. During college, I met my friend Shelby. If you know me, you know that I love all things Disney. However, my Disney obsession is nothing compared to Shelby's. We always said our friendship was built on our love for Jesus and our love for Disney. Shelby has an incredible faith that has kept her going through many tough experiences in her life. She was not raised in a Christian home, but chose to give her life to Jesus when she was in middle school. Shelby and I began meeting once a week for lunch during my freshman year, and that continued through my junior year when Shelby graduated, and still now, even every time I go down to Disney, we always meet up for dinner to catch up. While we loved talking all things Disney at lunch, we also had many incredible conversations about our faith. When I was overwhelmed by homework, Shelby was the one that insisted I take a break and go to Powerhouse with her. Powerhouse was our once-a-week worship service at Messiah that was all music. She encouraged me to pray when I was struggling and to always be in the Word. I also was always someone who struggled with fully trusting God, as I love to be in control. Shelby's faith and trust in God is admirable and continues to encourage me. And now that we have both graduated, Shelby lives in Florida and I'm here in New Jersey. We may go months without talking, but when I'm struggling or need to be grounded in my faith, Shelby's the person I go to talk through things and just continue to grow my faith. I think about these people in my life, as well as many others who served as disciples in my life, when I think about why do I care about being a disciple. For some, it may be because it's what we're supposed to do as Christians. For others, it may be because it's what the Bible says. But for me, I think about how these people have changed my life by helping me grow in my faith, and I want to share that with those around me. Discipleship is important to me because I know about God's incredible love and how my faith has gotten me through all situations, and I want to be able to share that with others. If we go back to the earlier definition of discipleship, I care about it because it means I'm always growing and learning more about my faith, while also teaching others so that I can make more disciples to go out and share with others the good news of Christ. I want to take a few minutes and focus on a specific area of discipleship that is important to me, and that's discipleship with our youth. I talked earlier about how my Sunday school teachers, VBS leaders, and camp counselor served as a disciple in my life. When God called me to be a teacher many years ago, I did not know part of his calling would be getting to be a disciple for our youth and to help them grow in their faith and become disciples of Christ. I was at a seminar a few weeks ago, and I heard these stats about young adults in faith. According to research by others, such as the National Study of Youth and Religion, Barna and Lifeway, only about 40 to 50%, or 1 in 2 students, cross the bridge out of high school with their faith intact. Research suggests that nearly half will walk away from faith and or the church within 12 to 18 months after graduation. Another survey of 2,000 young adults who had attended church in high school found that 2/3 stopped attending church for a year or more between ages 18 through 22. And finally, while nearly 1 in 5 Americans are young adults, only 1 in 10 churchgoers are young adults. I was shocked and heartbroken to hear these statistics, to know that so many young adults are going through their life without their faith. If we want to keep young adults within the church and help them to continue on their faith journey, we need to reach them when they are young. We need to be disciples to our youth so that they can know about God and see how God can change their lives. We need to be mentors and teachers as disciples who connect with our youth and encourage them on their faith journey. I believe that as a church, we are responsible for being disciples to our youth and raising them to be disciples who will go out and tell the world about Christ. Through preschool and summer camp and VBS and Sunday school and youth group and JAM, we are offering programs for youth to learn about Christ, and we are raising the next set of disciples. One of my favorite things about directing Vacation Bible School is seeing the discipleship happening throughout the program. Not only are children learning about Jesus in the Bible throughout the week for them to share with others, but there's discipleship amongst our volunteers. Every year I have adult and youth volunteers, and I encourage the adult volunteers to be a mentor for the youth volunteers. While the focus of the week is teaching the children, I have seen connections form amongst youth and adult volunteers that provides the youth volunteer with someone they can go to and learn from. And something I have found as I work with youth and children and continue to share about Christ with them is that I'm always learning and continuing to grow, whether through conversations or through questions needing answers. There have been many times where I want to teach a Bible story to children and need to look further into the story so I can help them best understand what we can learn from the story. And let me tell you, when you work with teenagers, they ask some tough questions, but that can lead to deeper conversations where we can grow and learn together. So when thinking about discipleship and why you care about being a disciple, think about the youth and how being a disciple to them can impact the future and your own life. Over the next few weeks, we will be hearing more about discipleship and how we can be disciples to those around us, even when it is difficult. As we start this journey together on discipleship, I ask you to think about a disciple as a student and as a teacher. As disciples, we are always learning and always growing in our faith so that we can go out and teach others about Christ. There will never be a time where we know it all about God and Christ in the Bible. There will always be new things we will learn as we are in the Word and as we are discussing our faith with those around us. Now, for those of you who know me, it's probably surprising I've gone this long without a Disney quote or reference, but I of course found a way to include one. In the song Son of Man from Tarzan by Phil Collins, he says, "In learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn." For me, that's what discipleship is. We are learning so that we can teach others, but as we teach, we continue to learn more about Christ and his promises for us. So as Gina said last week, it is our responsibility as a church to go out and make disciples and share the love of God. So I want to leave you with these 3 questions to think about over the next few weeks as we continue on our journey of discipleship. How can you be a disciple to those around you? Where do you feel called to share about God's love? How do you want to grow in your faith so that you can go out and make disciples?